here on Live Now from Fox to discuss this major purchase or intended purchase by Elon Musk today for Twitter is Washington Post columnist Megan McArdle. Megan, good of you to be with us. And I read your piece in the Post today. Well, I think it was yesterday, rather.
Yesterday.
Anticipating the sale. You were somewhat pessimistic that it was going to go through or that Musk was actually going to get the financing, but now he has. What say you about that?
Well, yeah, it wasn't even that I wondered if he could get the financing. It was more that I wondered if Elon Musk was actually going to care enough to pursue this. I mean, you know, you've had these announcements that he was going to buy, that he was going to take Tesla private. He likes to troll people on Twitter. And I confess that I suspected that this was just another troll. But it's not. I mean, he secured the financing and then today, it looked like he was getting close to a deal with the board, and indeed, they've announced that it looks like they're going to go through with it. It could close as soon as this week. So, or get settled. The terms could get settled as soon as this week. So I think that this is now happening. The question is, I think, first of all, this deal doesn't make a lot of financial sense for Elon Musk. He's going to be paying $1 billion a year in interest costs in order to do this deal, which is a lot even for Elon Musk. He's the richest dude in the world, but it's not like he has an actually unlimited money tree in his backyard. And so as he thinks harder about that, if he might sort of have second thoughts, and there are all sorts of ways that you can pull out of the deal before it actually closes if you want to. If it goes through, I think then the question is, what can he actually do with Twitter? He's floated a bunch of different things. He could make it a subscription model. He wants to get rid of the bots that are these automatic software programs that, tweet at people, comb their tweets, pretend to be followers so that people can feel more important than they actually are. And I think that these are interesting ideas, but I'm sort of skeptical on the business basis. Is there really enough interest in Twitter to have, say, a $3 a month subscription? Yes, for people like me who are just addicts and we're on the site all day, every day. But are there enough of us to substitute for the advertising that is currently driving Twitter's profits? I think that's a big question. And here's the thing is Elon Musk can afford to lose some amount of money on this. He is, again, the richest man in the world, but he can't afford to lose unlimited amounts of money on it. So how much money is he willing to lose? And how much play does he have with the business model if indeed, he really wants to change it to be more of a free speech, no holds barred, kind of old style internet platform rather than the heavily moderated place it is today?
Yeah, and that kind of goes to the point, you and I live on the site each and every day. But, for those of, Americans who are really big fans of Elon Musk, who are not on Twitter, this might not affect them so much. But for the people who are on the site, it seems like people have their hair on fire over this announcement today. And you see this kind of splitting, as is per usual, into ideological camps. We got word from Senator Elizabeth Warren. She says this deal is dangerous for our democracy. She tweeted that out. The NAACP president put out a statement saying that disinformation, misinformation, and hate speech have no place on Twitter. And they kind of are, a four-alarm fire status over at the NAACP, thinking that former President Trump is going to be let back on Twitter. But, like you mentioned in your piece, this really might not have an impact on the day-to-day website itself, or even in the day-to-day, up in the C-suite for workers who are employed by Twitter.
So look, I think for the very big high-level decisions, is Trump going to be allowed to be on Twitter or not? Elon Musk can make that decision. He can make it stick. He can allow President Trump back onto Twitter if he wants to. But for the more common things that people have been worrying about, something for those who are not deeply in the know, something called shadow banning, where you're not actually banned from Twitter, but you don't show up in people's feeds. They've kind of just quietly de-emphasized your tweeting. You don't show up in the search engine when people search for your name. That stuff is harder to change. And the reason it's harder to change is, look, Twitter has 7,500 employees and Elon Musk is running other companies. It's hard enough to change a company when you are single-mindedly devoted to the task. And you talk to turnaround experts and it's amazing. You know, they'll say like, people just often have to take a nuke it from orbit approach to the company's workforce, where you just literally fire everyone and make them reapply for their jobs, or you move the company to another city, actual thing that has happened, in order to, that most of your workforce is not going to want to follow. And the reason that they do this is, look, people who are working at a company that works a certain way, they're there because they like the way the company works. So when you come in and say, we're going to do something completely different, they're going to tend to dig in. And the bigger the change, the more the digging in. And you would be surprised how often managers just spend trying to figure out how to get workers to do the thing that management has decided they will do. It's actually a lot harder than it sounds at any company. And when you're only running it part-time, you know, so a lot of this is going to depend on, can he get a CEO in who he trusts, who is competent, who can run this place well, and who will do his bidding. And then, you know, this is the worst time in the world to be firing a lot of people, which is often how these things go when you want to do a turnaround, because the labor markets are so tight. Where are you going to get the replacements?
Yeah, and there was an all hands meeting at Twitter today for their employees. And it doesn't look like there's going to be any layoffs in the immediate near term. And so we'll just kind of have to be looking out for that. Though, you know, some think Twitter will now become more of a cesspool, more disinformation, more animosity. But like Elon Musk, on the other side of that, he thinks this is going to be a great moment for free speech to be flourishing, more so than it has been on Twitter, less about, you know, content moderation and the like. So politically speaking, I guess when it falls on those fault lines, are you optimistic that Twitter can become a better place than it is right now with Musk at the helm?
Look, I came up in the old internet that was basically unmoderated. I liked that better than the kind of crowdsourced cultural revolution we now have going on Twitter, as I said in my column. But a lot of people don't like it. And that's why Twitter is the way it is. That's why Facebook is the way it is. And it's also true that there's going to be moderation. There always is. We don't want child porn on there. Someone has to take it off. We don't want spam on there. Someone has to, you know, make that decision. And so there's always going to be an arms race between the real bad actors that no one wants. The question is, where do you draw the line? And I think that's why the workforce is so important, is that the people who are going to be drawing the line are going to be a lot further down the management tree than Elon Musk or his CEO. It's going to be the ordinary everyday workers. Yes, I mean, to some extent, if you are allowing more free speech, are you risking more disinformation? Obviously, but I also think we have to remember the ways in which Twitter has promoted disinformation by trying to fight disinformation, and they're not alone. And I think the canonical case of this was the Hunter Biden laptop that sort of turned up under mysterious circumstances in a Delaware repair shop. And Twitter suppressed the story when the New York Post broke it, banned the New York Post's account for 2 weeks, suspended it, I should say, for linking to their story. And now it turns out that that story was true. So, you know, there's, that was disinformation. Now, it's not disinformation that Democrats worry about because it helped get Joe Biden elected, but it is disinformation. And, you know, so I think that the ultimate effect is not clear. What you would like to see is obviously someone who is a moderation policy that is still, for example, going to take down libelous false claims, something that is still going to take down illegal activity, that's going to take down the spammers who would fill our accounts, but is going to leave most of the other conversation up. Can they get there with the workforce they have or whatever workforce they will have? I think that really remains to be seen.
So Megan McArdle's thought about all of this is, don't expect major changes anytime soon with this takeover by Elon Musk.
Indeed.
All right, we'll leave it at that. Thank you so much for coming on Live Now from Fox. We'll talk to you again.
Thanks for having me.